OG Anunoby, the #1 pick we took in the most recent expansion draft just a few months ago, has officially requested a trade prior to the trade deadline from the Vancouver Blizzard. He is fed up with the organization and doesn't believe it's a good fit. And it's hard to argue that he's wrong because he's under 35% from the field and the three-pointers are falling at a clip under 28%. That's just not good enough. So as we sit here on the trade deadline, we've got to find a way to make something work for OG Anunoby. I really thought this is going to be a guy that we could keep for quite some time. That's why we took him in the first round. It just has not been the fit that I was hoping for. Luckily enough for us though, at a base 85 overall, we should be able to get some at least solid picks. I'm looking for if we can get a pick that has the potential to be a lottery pick. I'm not talking about top 5 because a team picking top 5 wouldn't trade that pick for OG Anunoby. If we can get a late lottery pick plus maybe a future pick for OG, I'm thinking I'd be willing to make that move. There was not as much trade interest for OG as I had initially anticipated here. The best first round pick that was offered to us was Phoenix's first round pick this season alongside Dennis Schroeder for OG Anunoby, and that pick is going to be borderline lottery. The Suns are currently the 9th best team in the Western Conference right now. So you're talking some are probably going to be ending up in the late teens. This isn't enough for me though. I need another pick. If I'm going to move on from OG, even though he has requested a trade, I'm not going to do it for pennies on the dollar. I want the Suns 2027 pick as well. I think the Suns have the chance to be bad in future years. I don't think they're just going to do this though. I think we're going to have to probably send them a first alongside it. But if we can get a 2027 Phoenix first for our 2029 first, I think that would work for me because I project that we're going to be good by 2029. And so if we can pull off something like this, I would be interested. We have to get the trade exception into the trade here, of course, to make it work. That was not accepted here. They want 2 seconds alongside of it. Interesting. Throw me back just a bad second. Something like, what about the Heat's second this year? Let's see if the Brooklyn Nets are in for this. Oh my goodness. Can we not do this second or something? They're really nickel and diming us here. They want not our second round this year, which I guess is solid, but they want... All right, I'll take this one out if you take this one out. We'll still be really bad next year, so our 2026 second will be pretty high. Maybe by 2027, we'll have our rookie for his first and second season by that point. How about this instead? This will have us with no picks in 2029 currently. Will they accept this? Looks like no. Looks like no. They'll give us a swap in 2029, which I guess is better than that trade initially. We can get the best between us and Dallas. We might be better than Dallas in 2029. It looks like this is going to have to be the trade. I think this is as good of value as we're going to get for OG. Talking about a middle of the first round pick likely this year. And we're going to bet on Phoenix to be bad. They don't have as bad of a situation in this series as they do in real life, just because they were able to get off the Bradley Beal contract. But I don't know if Phoenix is going to be a team that's getting any better over the next couple of seasons. Booker's not going to regress, but Durant will. They just don't have any other pieces that I'm confident will contribute to winning, and they're not even a playoff team this year. So a couple of Phoenix picks. We have to give up our first round and some seconds alongside it. This is about as good of a trade we're going to get for OG. I think that contract really played into it, as well as the fact that it was publicly announced that he was requesting a trade. That probably impacted the value we were able to get for him. Really sad we weren't able to make it work with OG. I was really excited that we were able to get him in the expansion draft, but at the very least, we were able to recoup some first round value, including a pick in this next draft, which is really helpful because we need some rookies to come in and start helping us as soon as next season. Now it's time to start looking at some of our other veterans though, and Malcolm Brogdon is somebody that I think we're gonna have to try to deal. He's coming off of a really good season, so he should have some intrigue out there for a team that's looking to win this year. But that's not the reason I really want to trade him, is because he is on an expiring contract. So we were just losing him. I don't know if it makes sense to resign the 33-year-old for next year. I mean, he could serve as a mentor. We could also just sign him back in free agency as a mentor if we really want him. But if there's a playoff team looking for a boost that will give us a first rounder sometime in the future, or maybe even this year, I'm willing to trade Brogdon for that. We are in the running for the highest lottery odds for a very talented #1 overall player. We're not in that first place though, and I kind of do want to get into first place. We're getting offered a 2029 second here. The Hawks are offering us a first round pick. Interesting. As are the Jazz. Interesting. I wonder which first that is. The Kings are offering us a first for a second swap. I'm interested in a Hawks first for sure. Which first are the Jazz offering us? Is this the Timberwolves first? Oh, it's the Lakers first? That's interesting. That's very interesting. The Jazz are also the only team offering us a first round pick for Cam Johnson, although that is the Timberwolves pick this year. They're currently the 4th seed in the West. And so that's going to be a pick in the 20s somewhere. I'm not sure if that makes as much sense for us in this moment. They also want a second back. But this is really our only opportunity to get a first for Cam Johnson if we want to trade him. I don't know if the Jazz could do both. We're going to have to figure out exactly what we're doing here with this trade. I was just trying to take a look at the Jazz roster and their record for this year. They traded Lauri Markkanen for Trae Young. A big time move. We'll take a look at all the trades that happened once I'm done making my moves at the trade deadline. But that is a massive deal here. Unfortunately for us though, the Jazz are just right behind us in terms of lottery odds in the league, and so I don't think it would be something that would make sense for them to be trading for Malcolm Brogdon. I'm not going to allow myself to accept that deal. I'm not trying to be 100% realistic in this series per se. I'm doing a draft only franchise, but I do like to make trades that at least feel like it makes sense for where the other team is. The Hawks though, they need a point guard now. And so Malcolm Brogdon having a really good year. They are currently the 7th seed in the East, so they are a playoff team. Getting somebody that can play point guard now that they acquired Lauri Markkanen, I think makes sense. So I'm going to accept the Hawks deal for Malcolm Brogdon here. And then I think I'll go and accept that Utah Jazz deal for Cam Johnson. Here we go. Brogdon for the 2027 first, and it's Utah's unprotected pick. So they just got a pick from Utah in that Lauri Markkanen for Trae Young trade. Kind of want Atlanta's first over Utah's, but I think I'll take Utah's first here. There you have it. So we've gotten a total of +2 firsts because we've given one away as well. But we now have 3 firsts in 2027, which is pretty awesome. and we have 2 firsts for this year, and then we just don't have any first in 2029. So we have gotten rid of a lot of our second round picks, unfortunately, but we have our second rounders for the next 2 years, which is important for me. These are the 2 years that we probably need second rounders the most. Now, I think we're going to make one more trade here. I do think Cam Johnson for a first is something that can make sense for us. He just hasn't been very good. I'm not sure if that's actually enough value, though. That's going to be a pick in the 20s, and we have to give up our second rounder next year. So how much value are you actually getting for Cam Johnson? Let's check that trade one more time. I'm pretty sure it was the Minnesota first rounder this year for our second rounder next year. If they would do this for the 2029 instead of next year's, I'd do it. I don't know if I can do it for the 26. That might be a difference of like 1 year and 10 picks or less, which isn't enough value for Cam Johnson to me. They'll do it for Patrick Mills and the guy we just got from the Hawks. I think that's fair. So we get a first rounder this year. We lose a second rounder all the way in 2029. We no longer have any picks in 2029. We could always get one later. That's many years into the future. Getting ourselves maybe some trade up ammo. Could we end up trading up with the Minnesota and the Phoenix pick to get a pick higher in this draft class? I think that could make sense. Either way, picks are fun, and Cam Johnson just hasn't quite been the level of shooter that I wanted him to be. We made our roster worse this year, which was ultimately one of my goals. If you look here at the NBA standings, we are the worst team in the West, but a couple of teams out in the East have us beat. So if you go all here, the Wizards and the Nets are both teams that have currently worse records than us. The Nets have 4 more losses than us right now. I don't know if that's going to be somebody that we can catch. The Wizards, though, it's just a 1-game difference. I think we just made our team pretty significantly worse. I think we could easily catch the Wizards and maybe even catch the Nets. And honestly, these top 3 all have pretty much the same odds anyway. Just the benefit of being the last team is you can't get worse than the 5th pick. So that is a nice bonus. And there you have it. Utah being the second worst team in the West and acquiring Trae Young. Certainly a mind-blowing move. Let's take a look at what happened elsewhere around the league, though, because I'm now done with my trades here in year 1. So here are the trades here for the 2025 NBA trade deadline. As you can see, I did take over the Supersonics GM. I wanted to give them some cap relief because I feel like they took on way too many big contracts here. They had a 5-year deal with Emmanuel Quickly that I got them off of, got them a first-round pick with it. Also got them off of a 2-year John Collins deal. Dorian Finney-Smith is also a 2-year deal, but it is about $12 million less for those 2 years. And then I had to do this one here. Sonics had way too many centers at like 80 overall, and they had only 1 point guard on the roster, so they trade for Chris Paul. These are the other ones I made myself. Oftentimes in my series, I will concoct a blockbuster trade somewhere else in the league if there's a team that I feel like it makes sense that they would sell at the deadline. But I feel like with the Lauri Markkanen for Trae Young trade, the CPU kind of took care of a blockbuster trade for me this year, so I didn't feel the need to do it. Of course, here's our 3 trades. Now, one thing you could argue, we did show that the Nets were the worst team in the league, so why would they trade OG Anunoby? I think that is fair. But one thing to note is they actually don't have their 2025 first-round pick, so they have no incentive to tank here. Could they have used the Suns' first-round pick? Sure, but they also have other picks in this class, and so getting better this year when they have no incentive to tank, I think doesn't super go against kind of what would happen. They also made a trade to get a little bit better here with John Collins. So the Nets getting better actually helps us. We might even be able to surpass them here. But let's go to just trades only. When did this big trade happen? This happened 4 days before the trade deadline. It was Lauri Markkanen and a first in 2027, which the Hawks then flipped to us for Trey. And the Hawks acquired Lauri Markkanen, and then they get Brogdon to be their point guard afterwards using that 2027 Jazz first. So the Hawks turned Trae Young into Lauri Markkanen and Malcolm Brogdon, who has been a lot better in this series than maybe he's viewed in real life currently. And the Jazz turned Lauri Markkanen and a first into Trae Young. And then they got Cameron Johnson for the Timberwolves first. Very interesting stuff. I'm not sure how much either team got better, but they're both very different, which is very fun. And that was really the only big time trade, I'd say. The only one with a first, except the Grizzlies traded a first for Gary Harris. I mean, good on the Magic for getting a first for Gary Harris, I'd say. That's the only other first rounder that was acquired other than the two expansion teams trying to get a couple of firsts here along the way. Pretty active trade deadline for the expansion teams. Pretty active trade deadline for the Hawks and the Jazz. Otherwise, quiet around the league. After those trades, the roster is looking a little bit worse for wear, especially if you look at the depth pieces. Finally, we're able to get Leonard Miller some minutes. I want to see if he can prove that what he was doing early on was not a fluke. Also going to get Max Christie some minutes this season. 20 minutes for all 5 of our bench players, 28 minutes for all 5 of our starters. That feels like the way to go. If you look at our timeline, it looks a little something like this. And there you have it. This is what we're going to be rocking with. Not a very good lineup, but luckily my plan is to finish off the regular season today. I think we've established that we have problems. We've established who we're looking to fix our problems with in the upcoming draft, and we've established who we're going to trade and who we're going to keep going into the second offseason. I really wish we still could have kept OG Anunoby. It just wasn't a relationship that was working. Really funny that he went from Canada to New York to Canada to New York so far in his career. Seems like he liked New York with the Knicks. Hopefully he can have more fun here with the Nets as well. Let's finish off the regular season for our Vancouver Blizzard. And one last thing here before the deadline goes. Schroeder is going to be swapped here to the Wizards for their second rounder next year. They're terrible this year. They'll probably be terrible next year as well. So I think that might be quite a high second. We have to take a 2-year contract here. That's why we're getting the value. Not great, but I felt like Schroeder was too good to just waste on our bench for the rest of the year. So we're making this trade. I know not everyone's going to be a fan of the full-on fire sale at the trade deadline, but ultimately this is what we did it for. We are now the dead last team record-wise in basketball. There's 1 game left, and there's a tie here. So if we win and these two guys lose in the last game, it'll be tied. But anyway, you just want one of the top 3 because the top 3 lottery odds are all pretty much the same. And so we've guaranteed at least a top 3 if we don't actually end up at number 1. And that's where I wanted to be by the time the season ended. I think having the best chance at a top 4 pick is more important than really anyone that we traded away. I mean, OG Anunoby is obviously the most controversial one. He was our number 1 pick and our best player overall wise. He hated it in Vancouver, though. That's really the end of the story. I mean, when somebody doesn't want to play for your team and they're performing super poorly, sometimes you just gotta call it an L and move on. And that's what we did. Taking a look at this team, though, Jalen Duren ends up being our leading scorer this year. 14.5 points, 10.5 rebounds, assists and a half, 1.5 stocks. Had slightly more assists than turnovers, which is nice. Shot 33%, but of course on like no volume. But just under 55% from the field, like that from Jalen Duren. Happy to have him. 79 starts for us this year. PJ Washington and Isaiah Joe tie-in for 12.5 apiece there. Efficiency-wise, I mean, Isaiah Joe got up to almost 40%, which is kind of where I want him to be. So that's good for him. Lonzo ended up with 12 and 6. Super inefficient, though, which is really unfortunate. Kevin Love's pretty much here for the mentorships. Leonard Miller. I tried to get him to play, but literally like 4 games in a row, they kept getting injuries. And so finally, I just let the CPU take over the lineup. So unfortunately, he didn't get any additional playing time. I wanted to. The game was driving me mad, dude. Like, I kept putting him in the lineup, and I kept having to change the lineup before like every game. So ultimately, hopefully he gets some offseason progression and can actually be good enough for the CPU to put him in those situations. But honestly, after this year, where I probably won't be making CPU lineups, I'll be doing them all myself. But here in year 1, I wanted to get through some time, and the game just simply wasn't allowing it. Unfortunately, Leonard Miller, only played in 5 games this year. Looked really good. Hopefully he gets that offseason progression. After that, we got Christie here, 6.6 points per game. Not bad here, under 30% though. Played in 30 games this year, played after the trade deadline. Josh Green only scored 6 points per game, starting 69 games for us. That just doesn't feel right. I mean, he shot 39% from 3, but this guy has to do more. I even manually upgraded some tendencies, and maybe they didn't save, I don't know, but how was this guy only scoring 6 points per game? That's something that we have to get in a better spot next year. I don't know why I jumped all the way down here, but Josh Green, kind of disappointing, honestly. Hopefully, tendencies do change in the offseason progression period. This guy's got to be more aggressive, because this is the most opportunities he's going to have. Hopefully. I mean, we might get screwed by the lottery or something like that, but this team should have more options for ball handling, for scoring next year. If the offseason goes as planned, this is the worst team we're going to have, hopefully, and Josh Green couldn't even score more than 6 points per game on it. So a little disappointing there. Monty Bates hates it here. It is what it is. He was like our last pick in the expansion draft. Not a lot of offensive firepower. I'm hoping the lottery gods favor us this year and can gift us with a nice, juicy little top 4 pick, and if we're extremely lucky, even number 1. We would end up losing that last game, so securing the number 1 lottery odds, and to the surprise of no one, it is Luka for MVP. I've already talked about how I dislike how often this happens in the game in my previous series. Don't want to go too much into it here, but I'm sure once again he had his career highs. I mean, career high here by more than 2. And usually he's like above 50%, so he actually didn't do that this year. He didn't get his career high in efficiency like he almost always does, but it is what it is. It's more of a Luka Sims too well problem, because obviously those stats right there are very much so MVP worthy, less of a 2K's MVP problem. I just wish there was a little bit more variety in who wins MVP early on in 2K franchises, but it is what it is. Zachary Rizachet on 15 points per game and 40% from the field is your rookie of the year. Wasn't a very strong rookie class. The draft wasn't viewed very strongly, and it looks like nobody had an insanely good year of the rookies. Amen Thompson is your 6th man of the year, 12, 8, and 6 with like 2.5 stocks plus. That's kind of wild, honestly. Victor Wembanyama, look at these stats: 3 blocks a game, 4.5 stocks, 11 rebounds, 27.5 points. Absolutely insane stuff. We get a player on the awards list in Jalen Duren, most improved player. After the trade deadline, his offensive role needed to expand, and he was able to keep himself above 55% from the year. He must have had a good game in the last game because I think he was just below 55% heading into it. But Jalen Duren, most improved player of the year. You have to love it. Anthony Edwards is your clutch player of the year. That's how many points a game? What? Almost 39 points a game for Anthony Edwards. That's crazy. That's wild. Let's go to the All-NBA teams now. Of course, Luka's going to be on it. He's just won MVP. You got Giannis with 33.5, 12, and 5, shooting 56% from the field. 27, 11, and 9 from Jokic. 39, 6, and 4 from Anthony Edwards. 31, 12 and a half, and just under 4 assists for Joel Embiid. You've got Victor Wembanyama. Already seen his stats. Steph Curry, we know what he's about. Excellent offensive numbers, 43% from the three-point line with all that volume as well. Tyrese Halliburton averaged a double-double with 4.5 rebounds on top of it. Trae Young traded to Utah. It's a wild CPU trade. One of the wilder ones I've seen them do. Had his career high in points. Didn't quite have as many assists as he normally does, though. And LeBron James on his farewell tour. Probably should have seen the game against LA just to see what the farewell tour, entails. But obviously, just an insane career from the King. 27, 7 and 7 career, despite never actually getting 27, 7 and 7 in the games. All right. LaMelo Ball makes an All-NBA team. Okay, with 28, 5, and 7. We get Kawhi on the All-NBA list. Welcome back. Hopefully he had a nice, healthy season. Bam Adebayo, he's going to have the high stocks. Good assists for a center as well. And 12.5 rebounds is really good. Anthony Davis here in the All-NBA list. Another guy you're just hoping to stay healthy. Jalen Brunson, 31, 3, and 6 from him. Really good stuff. Defensive goes to Wemby, Giannis, Mobley, Adebayo, and Walker Kessler in the first team. Congrats to him. Gobert, Kawhi, Triple J, Embiid, and Davis. No real surprises there except for Kessler in the first team. He's a really good shot blocker, but I'd guess that's above what you'd expect. Only 8 rookies look like got really enough minutes this season to make the all-rookie team. So these are the guys that made it. Let's get to the playoffs. Going in the Western Conference here. Oh, the Suns didn't even make the play-in. I was expecting them to be in the 9 or 10 matchup. They ended up falling out of the play-in entirely. I didn't see what their record was. So we don't have to worry about that. I was planning on having somebody to root for in the play-in tournament, but that's not the case here. So let's see what happens here in the playoff. The Boston Celtics are a play-in team. 2K hates the Celtics, and I don't know why, but they're never as good as they should be. It's Knicks versus the Mavericks in the NBA Finals. Fun matchup here. Let's see what happens. Sometimes I think in future seasons where there's game 7s like this with both of the conference finals, we might hop into the final minutes of those if they're competitive. Just for year 1 though, that's not really what we're going to do. I would rather get to the offseason and get to the fun part of this series as quickly as we can. The Dallas Mavericks are your NBA champions, and your finals MVP is, of course, Luka, same as your regular season MVP. And just like that, the 2024-2025 NBA season is done, and we can start getting excited about the future. As of right now, I am currently planning on live streaming the lottery, get our reactions, what our first pick is going to be together, and then after that we will do our final draft preview. I have a few more guys that are at least interesting in this class. I apologize if you can hear my dryer going in the background, but we'll be doing that, I think, live, unless you guys would rather just be a regular episode. Well, let's get to that draft lottery point here to finish off this one. LeBron James retiring at the age of 40, as is Chris Paul, Lowry, Horford, Conley, Kevin Love. We won't get him back as a mentor. No real surprises here, I'll say. I mean, a couple moderately surprising for sure, but we get 3 members of the Hall of Fame. LeBron James, Chris Paul, and Russell Westbrook will all head to the Hall of Fame here. Jersey retirements: Russell by the Thunder, Paul by the Clippers, LeBron James by his 3 teams, and Kyle Lowry gets his number retired as a Raptor here. Congrats to those guys. Obviously big time players for their organizations. So far, no rule changes here. For the most part, I won't force rule changes to come into play. If there are any rule changes you guys would like to see in later seasons, let me know. Really what I'd like to do here is if there's one that's accepted that is extremely stupid, then I'll force reject it. That's really what only thing I'll ever do here. But I am fine with, some rule changes happening. But that's going to bring us here to the draft lottery, which will be where we end off the episode. Not going to go any further than this. I'd like to do this live, and if you guys think that's a good idea, let me know in the comment section below. And pray for the Vancouver Blizzard to get the #1 overall pick. I'd really like to take our guy, Ayrton Saramago, with our first pick. That would be an excellent start to this franchise series. But I think we do have options as long as we can stay in the top 4. If we fall out of that, then we're in some major trouble. I'm just going to say that. We will go more over the rest of this draft class in the next episode, but there is a major drop-off in my mind after the top 4. We'll talk about it more in the next episode, though. Hope you're excited for it. I certainly am. That's all I've got here for the episode. We'll be back soon with more Vancouver Blizzard draft-only franchise here on 2K25. And until then, bring the Blizzard.